Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for another midweek transfer talk. It's Wednesday, so I thought I'd jump on and do a live and talk through all the latest prevalent Aston Villa transfer news with those that join me live on YouTube. Also, there's been a few quotes from Monchi the night before as well, which we can go over and we can talk about what he said and look at what that might mean for this transfer window for Aston Villa. This show is sponsored as ever by Match Bingo. The QR code is on the screen now permanently, so if you want to see what Match Bingo is all about, then scan the QR code if you've got your phone next to you. If you haven't got your phone next to you, then you can download the app by heading to 1874.io/matchbingo, and you can buy bingo cards ahead of all the football that's coming up now. We've got internationals, we've got the World Club Cup, so the Match Bingo app is a fun way to try and win yourself a little bit of cash without spending a fortune and enjoy the football in a different way. So do check that out if that is your thing. Right, Oscar Zaremba absolutely panning the chat early doors. Good afternoon to you, Oscar. Mr. Green says another 1874 live stream. You know that it's going to be a good day. I mean, you're building me up a little bit too much there, Mr. Green. Rich 1874, he's late, lol. Yep, I was late. I do apologise for that. I have been known to be late for these streams before, and I apologise. I've actually been pretty good recently. I've not been bad at being on time, but yes, today I was late. So yes, this is the midweek transfer talk. I did one on Sunday, I think was the last one of these that I did, although sometimes I say that Sunday is seen as the start of the week rather than Monday in some realms, which I'm not sure about. Let me know in the comments whether you think the week starts on Sunday or whether it starts on Monday. Sunday sounds like utter woke nonsense to me. Good afternoon, Richard Wilson. I am very well, thank you. I hope you are too. Philly D, João Felix, anyone? Inevitable that rumour will come up at some point during the transfer window, but I will go out on a limb now and say absolutely no chance that we sign João Felix. Gig Sharma, good afternoon to you as well. He says he loves the Max and Dan collab. If you haven't done so already, Max and myself did a video last night talking about Jacob Ramsey's future, PSR and the UEFA squad cost rule, so do go back and check that out via video or audio, whichever way you prefer. If you can, that would be great if you could go back and watch that. But let's do the show that I've come here to do then. Let's get some questions in the live chat. I'll come back and reflect on the questions and have a look at what people are asking. But we did get some quotes from Monchi last night. Louth and Proud says, any thoughts on the Monchi comments? Well, you're in for a treat, Louth and Proud, because I'm about to stick the quotes up on the screen and go through them. So the first one I've put up is Monchi talking about Emi Martinez. He says, the story between Dibu and Aston Villa must continue. That's my wish. He's happy and content, but I'm not in his head. And also a quote on Asensio here. Asensio hasn't lost his talent. He's given us a lot, and he's in our best interest. So I think two things. I'll start with the latter, the Asensio quote. That says to me, we're going to try and get that done. I don't believe that finishing in Europa League places rather than Champions League will affect Marco Asensio wanting to come to Aston Villa himself. He's very, very happy. He really enjoyed his time at Villa and he wants to come back, is my belief from speaking to a few people. So for a relatively low cost in the modern day, I know he's 29, 30, but Asensio to me feels different to when we tried to pull Coutinho in. There's a better body of work. I think he's got more about him. I think if you watch some of the players that play in the Europa League, you know, you watched, who was it in the Conference League final? Isco, absolutely running the Conference League final in the first half, an experienced Spanish player. The Europa League is built for players like Asensio. He'll absolutely run that, and I'd wager that if he comes, he'd play most games in the Europa League. So Asensio, I think that will happen. I've maintained the whole way through, like over the last kind of month or so, that I think Asensio will happen, and I stand by that. I believe that Villa will try and sign Marco Asensio, and that it will be a relatively straightforward deal to complete because he wants to come. PSG want him gone. He's not on mega wages like Marcus Rashford. Maybe even I wouldn't rule out the possibility of getting him in on loan again. But my thought is that Villa will get him in for a relatively low fee, even lower than the fee I think that's being quoted, around 13 to 15 million. I think Villa will try and pull him in for lower than that. I think they'll get joy in doing that. Go to PSG. PSG want him to go. And I think he'll go and he'll come back to Villa. Right, that Emi Martinez bit. So sometimes you have to take into account the language barrier and the way things are translated. So I'm going to try and do that. I'm not an interpreter, as you'll all know, but I'm going to try and kind of read into the wording a little bit. So the story between Dibu and Aston Villa must continue. That's my wish. That doesn't confirm that it will continue. That's Monchi saying he'd like it to continue and he'd like Emi Martinez to stay. He's happy and content. Look, Emi Martinez loves Villa, big player for Villa, big character in the dressing room, absolutely loves Villa, but I'm not in his head. Now, looking at Emi Martinez crying on the last game at Villa Park of the season, there's only one reason you're crying, isn't it? There's no other reason other than I think this might be my last game. Emi Martinez will be aware of the PSR and the UEFA squad rule constraints. Emi Martinez, as Jacob said previously, almost kills two birds with one stone in that he gets rid of a massive earner off the books for the UEFA squad cost rules, and Villa would get a good fee. I would suspect between 40 and 50 million for Emi Martinez. The goalkeeper market is starting to move now. My theory is that I think Villa, before June the 30th, if they could choose one of their big hitters to go at the moment, I reluctantly think it would be Emi because of him killing two birds with one stone, and then they back themselves to getting a goalkeeper. Now, very, very difficult position to get right goalkeeper. If Emi goes, as much as I'm saying I think he will go, and I know there's interest in Spain from Emi Martinez, and there's gonna be a goalkeeper domino effect at some point. There's Barcelona stuff around Joan Garcia this morning as well, talking about him in the Athletic. The Barca are very, very keen. I'll come on to that shortly. But once the goalkeeper market starts moving, people are going to make moves to different clubs. I think this summer, and I don't think it will be Emi, I think a big goalkeeper is going to go to Saudi Arabia, whether that be a big goalkeeper from Barcelona or a big goalkeeper from Atleti. I think a big goalkeeper is going to go to Saudi. That will start it off. And once that happens, which I think will be relatively soon maybe, I think that's when we'll know more about the goalkeeper game and how it's going to work. I've been quite steadfast. My thoughts are, from what I know, is at the moment, as it stands, I think Emi Martinez will go. I'm not saying that means he will definitely go, and I wouldn't rule him out staying. But at the moment, I think Emi will leave, and we'll look to bring in a younger goalkeeper. The two that mentioned are obviously Joan Garcia and Chevalier from Lille. They're the two. Jacob, on the pod that we did the other day, he didn't name them, but read between the lines, I'm pretty sure they were the two goalkeepers he was getting at. And Monchi also referenced absolutely no days off at the moment for him and Vidagani. They'll be doing so much work ahead of June the 30th, and they're going to have to do work ahead of June the 30th. So the Martinez quotes for me, they're more a Monchi kind of preference that in an ideal world, Emi Martinez would stay at Villa because he's a winner. But what he doesn't say there is that we're not living in an ideal world. So that's how I see those quotes. Do let me know in the chat whether you agree with me. The next quote that we have from Monchi here is, Emery has been able to bring out the best in Rashford, and Unai is the number one for that. He's a player with top-notch elite ability. We haven't lost hope. He has a significant connection with the club and Unai. So Emery has been able to bring the best in Rashford, and Unai is the number one for that. That's alluding to the fact that Emery has rescued so many careers, got the careers of players who'd lost their way back on track so many times. And Rashford, to a large extent, Emery did that. He got 4 goals and 6 assists, I think it was, in his time at Villa. He was really good for us, Marcus Rashford. Quiet in some games, but when he was going, he was going. Look at what he did to PSG. He was absolutely frightening. And I think Rashford will know that Unai Emery is the best coach for him. I think Rashford wants to play Champions League, but he'll know that Villa not being in the Champions League, the best manager he could work under now, and that's proven by January to May, I think is Unai Emery. He's a player with top-notch elite ability. As I've just said, Rashford on his day can be absolutely frightening. He absolutely ripped Paris Saint-Germain. The key bit here is we haven't lost hope. He has a significant connection with the club and with Unai. So Rashford really, really enjoyed his time at Villa. I think it's gone quite under the radar in the kind of national and worldwide press that Rashford was really, really committed to Villa. Certain players that play for Villa now that don't live in the area, Rashford moved himself down to the area for his loan spell. He put everything into being at Villa and making sure he was in the best condition. Look, unfortunately, he picked up an injury towards the end of the season, but before that, he did absolutely everything he could to get himself in the premium shape to be available for Aston Villa. And whilst he was here, he put everything into it. And I think Villa were quite savvy in that they pretty much kept him away from media duties because, Marcus Rashford could have a fly on him and swat it away and it would make the national papers. He can't do anything right with the newspapers. But Villa made him keep a low profile. And I think what that actually did was it blocked out some of the noise, which I think was really good for him and obviously good for Villa as well. But also, It helped him concentrate on his game. It helped him get back to his level. But I think that made the good stuff about him almost go under the radar, because it's almost as if, well, if there's nothing bad to report, we're not going to report it at all. That's how I see Rashford's time with Villa. Now, if I'm being brutally honest, I think he wants to play Champions League football, and we can't offer him that. So we might not be his number one choice in terms of the pedigree of the competition that he can play in. I think the longer the transfer window goes on, the longer Marcus Rashford doesn't go anywhere, that's when I think Villa will swoop. And again, like I said with Asensio, I would not rule out another loan here. Man, you'll be desperate to shift him, desperate to sell him. But if they can't get a transfer fee that they want for him, and they might not be able to, I think as it gets later and they're trying to rebuild their squad and they're spending some money at the moment as well, which might actually be a good thing for Villa with the Rashford deal, then, the opportunity might arise where they think, well, at the very least, someone pays a loan fee and gets the wages off the bill for a season. Maybe Villa without Champions League football, maybe that's the market they look at. And as time goes on, Villa and Manchester United will come together and realise that actually a loan deal works pretty well for both. So I don't think Rashford to Barcelona can happen. Barcelona, I don't know what a financial lever is particularly, but they're putting levers out of absolutely everywhere, aren't they? Putting levers out of hats, Barcelona, to do things. Such an expensive deal for them to get done in terms of wages. Their front three is pretty well set as well, Barcelona, with Rafinha, who was absolutely stupendous for them all season, Lewandowski, who's the centre forward, and Lamine Yamal, who's out of this world. So where does Rashford actually play if he goes to Barcelona? The coach, Hansi Flick, has spoken about him. I have seen quotes from Hansi Flick about Marcus Rashford, but I don't see it. And then you start to look, Barcelona is a huge club, obviously a dream for many players to go to Barcelona, I'm sure, and I'm sure Rashford would absolutely love to go there. But if that doesn't happen, then where does that leave him? He's got to be looking at trying to make something happen with Villa there, because the proof's in the pudding. Unai Emery really, really worked well with him, got the best out of him. And if you give Rashford that, this is my worry. I don't want him to move late and not get a proper pre-season. I want, if we're to sign Rashford, ideally, you want him to have that proper pre-season and working with Emery week in, week out for pre-season. Villa come up with a tactical plan that maybe can get Rashford and Watkins in, or maybe it does just use one. Villa had to kind of reinvent their whole system to get Rashford in the team when he was playing from the left, and then he kind of ended the season as the number one centre forward before he got injured and Watkins was struggling to get in the team. If you get a pre-season with him, Emery can almost flip his system and work with it and try and get a system that can get the best out of Rashford. Maybe a system that works with him playing on the left. I quite liked the idea of Maatsen inverting, and he almost became that kind of second or third number 10 at times when they both play together down the left-hand side. If you've got a pre-season to work on these things, there's no reason why Rashford and Watkins can't play together, and I'd be really, really keen to see that. So that's where I think we are with Rashford. Again, let me know in the comments, let me know in the live chat if you agree with me. I can see the chat flying through. I'm just trying to go through these quotes before I get into it. Next one, Monchi. Barrenechea has had a great season at Valencia and is a player followed by many clubs. We have to see what Unai Emery wants, since we have many players in that position. Now, this is going to be the case for a few players, but in the main, Barrenechea is probably the main one with this, in that Villa will get him back, gauge his level in pre-season. Again, if they haven't lost a central midfielder, I think Emery likes the four that he's got. If they don't lose a central midfielder, then Barrenechea's got no chance and he'll end up being sold, I would have thought, because Villa can make a tiny little profit on him, and any profit helps in the current situation, and there's genuine interest in Barrenechea. Now, if Villa lose a midfielder, then obviously, rather than buying one to replace someone that goes, they'd have Barrenechea back for pre-season, have a look at him, see what he's about, see whether he could fit in and be a big player for Villa. It seems bizarre to me that a player that's in the Argentina squad might not be good enough for Villa. I'm not sure about that. I think it could be one of those transfers that comes back and bites you. I'd really like to see him given a chance, but I can also say that at the moment, the four central midfielders Villa have got, Emery's very happy with them. So there's no point in coming back and being fifth choice central midfielder. Obviously, we've got McGinn that can play there as well. So I'd really like to see him. I wouldn't like to see Barrenechea sold. I'd maybe like to see him have a look. Ideally, if you get him on loan to a bottom half Premier League team, that's the dream situation for us here. But I'm aware that we don't live in this ideal world that I keep talking about. And any fee that you can extract for players at the moment, Villa will have to look at it because of the rules, and the rules are broken, but they'll have to do it. So if someone comes in for 10 to 15 million pounds for Barrenechea and Emery's decided he's not ahead of the four that are already here, then he has to go. That's the landscape that we live in. But pre-season will be key. First few weeks, him coming back, although if he's on international duty, he obviously won't be back as early as some players. Get him back in the building. see what he's about. But ultimately, Monchi says it here. It's what Unai Emery wants, and that's what Aston Villa is. It's what Unai Emery wants. Unai Emery is the kingmaker. Aston Villa, he makes all the decisions. So also good chance for me to plug mine and Greg's podcast that we did on Monday. Plenty of relevant info in that. We did an Unai Emery special. Go back and watch or listen to that. Right, so that covers Monchi's quotes. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, there was an article in The Athletic this morning, and I've got to be honest, I did put an extract from it and forgot to copy it across. So I can't read verbatim what was said in that article, but I'll do my best off the top of my head to talk about what was said in that article. So it was quite clear that Barcelona want Joan Garcia. They're really, really keen to make him their keeper. They see him as the best goalkeeper in La Liga last season. If you speak to many people, and I've been speaking to a few other people since I did a show on him, this guy was the real deal last season. He's a real exciting goalkeeper. So Joan Garcia is going to go somewhere this season. There's a difficulty because he's very well liked by the Espanyol fans. They see him as a hero. A player hasn't moved between Espanyol and Barcelona for a long time. They're rivals, obviously, in the same area. If he was to go to Barca, there's a worry that would taint his relationship with Espanyol. And from reading the article, it doesn't sound like Garcia is keen to do that. Barcelona have got a problem because they've signed Chesney up to be back up for another year. That's fine. Their other goalkeeper, Peña, is going to go. Ter Stegen, obviously, 36 is a decent age for a goalkeeper, isn't he? It's not like he's going to be finished in the next few years. He's their number one goalkeeper. They need to move him on to be able to buy Joan Garcia, and we know all about Barcelona's finances and the financial levers that I spoke about earlier. Then Barca got a problem because I think he's contracted till 2028. Ter Stegen doesn't want to go. So that kind of makes it life very difficult for them to go and get Joan Garcia. Newcastle were mentioned in the article. I think it's quite clear that they need an upgrade in the goalkeeping department in the modern day for me, for a team playing in the Champions League. Nick Pope's not that type of goalkeeper. So I can see why they'd be in for Joan Garcia. And there was other teams that were mentioned. Arsenal have held an interest in him previously and tried to get him 12 months ago to be back up to Raya. Things have shifted quite considerably in that 12 months for him, in that he's become much more highly rated. At that point, he would have had an interest in being a number two to David Raya. Now he's completely proved himself in La Liga at the highest level. He wants to be a number one. So Arsenal won't happen. So if Martinez was to move, I would say Villa are in a good position with Joan Garcia from reading that article, because there'd be a clear number one slot at a not far off elite level Premier League team, a top level Premier League team that's operating in Europe. In fairness to him, he obviously hasn't played Champions League before, and I talk about this quite a lot on this show, that players sometimes they miss a step in a move. So going from Espanyol to playing Champions League football is quite a big jump. But actually a logical move is to going from Espanyol to playing for a Premier League team that hasn't really got title ambitions, if we're being honest, and that's operating in the Europa League. That's a nice little step. And then you build with that club, and in Villa, hopefully we all hope get back in the Champions League the season after. You're then more prepared and more equipped to play in that premium competition. So that's the way I see it with Joan Garcia at the moment. Obviously, much will depend on Emi Martinez. Now, as I said, my thinking is at the moment that he will go. But there's been players in the past, if I think back to 2020, for example, Jack Grealish was going. He was leaving the football club, and then he had a late change of heart and decided he couldn't do it, and he signed a new contract, and he moved 12 months later for 100 million. Things do change. So just because I think the landscape might be that Emi's going to go at the moment, doesn't mean that he doesn't come back from international duty, come back up for pre-season and decide, actually, I really want to be here. There's no chance I'm going to move. And if he just says, no, I'm not going, then you can't go, and there's your number one, and that's great. And if I'm being honest, that's what I'd really, really like. So the landscape shifts all the time. At the moment, I think he'll go, but we've seen previously with other players at the club, other big players at the football club, that things can change. Jack Grealish was going in 2020. He was so close to going. A late change of heart and a new contract later, and he stayed for a year. So that's where we were at with that. Anyone got any questions? We're 19 minutes in and I haven't taken a single question. I didn't know I could talk that long. AVFC Stato. Hello, AVFC Stato. In the chat. Michael Dimmock, I think you'll talk about Emi and Saudi. Don't see that. Don't see Emi going to Saudi. Not at all. He's too ambitious. He wants to win medals. He wants to play at the highest level that he can. I don't see Emi going to Saudi. You might not have been talking about Emi at that point, to be fair. So apologies if you weren't. But Emi Emmy and Saudi's a big no-no. Lindsay Holtender said she's heard that Kamara is talking to PSG. I've not heard anything about that. The Kamara contract offer is still on the table. It hasn't been rejected. It hasn't been accepted at the moment. So I think he was waiting to see what competition we're in. We're in a decent position with him. He's still got 2 years on his contract. Maybe, the ideal summer to sell him would be the summer after. But as I've said many times already today, we're not living in an ideal world. If someone came in 50, 60 million for Kamara, the club would accept it. That's the way of the world at the moment. Mr. Green, what do you think is going to happen with Redmond? I think it's the kid's only played 4 games in the Eredivisie, so I think it's pretty clear that he's not going to be coming here and backing up Ollie Watkins immediately. I think he'll be an under-21s player, and Jacob said very much the same in his article on The Athletic, that Redmond is coming in to be an under-21s player. So don't think you'll see him in the first team. Maybe the odd bench appearance, maybe the odd Europa League bench appearance or Carabao Cup, but he won't be coming and making an impact on the first team trials. It's a very different sign to when Villa signed John Duran for £20 million or whatever it was from Chicago Fire. It's a very different thing. Paul Kelly, Amazon documentary. I mean, Blues have got an Amazon documentary coming up. I definitely know that much. I'm not sure that this is a thing. I've seen it mentioned and mooted, but I'm really not sure that it's a thing. I've not heard anything about it. So other podcasters that used to speak to Chris Heck every day, that they might know about it. Maybe ask them about it. But at the moment, I've not heard anything about that. Blues have got one. I'd be very surprised if they're releasing a Blues documentary and a Villa documentary at the same time. I think Villa were recording stuff and we're gonna tout it around, but I'm not sure it ever got signed off or got signed up by anyone. There'll obviously be footage there. All Premier League teams will have tons of footage, but pretty late in the day for that not to have been sorted or announced by now. Like, you kind of know when it's coming, and I'm not sure that this is something that's going to happen. Gaming and Stuff says, with us being in the Europa League and able to qualify for the Champions League by winning it, would the club risk a points deduction from the league in order to keep one of our assets? I don't think they'd want a points deduction. I mean, look how tight it was this season. We finished outside the Champions League places on goal difference, which was galling enough. But imagine to have, been deducted 3 points and be 3 points off, and the club won't want a points deduction. From speaking to people, it's very, very clear that we're going to get a UEFA fine in the next month or two. That's almost inevitable that's going to happen. So watch out for that. The fine's going to come. I think most clubs, I think Chelsea are one as well, that are quite happy to take the fine. But you wouldn't want to be taking a points deduction because the margins are so tight. We've seen it. We've been a victim of it ourselves. 1 more point for Villa, and we're in the Champions League. So no club wants a points deduction, and no club would sit there and say that they're willing to do it. If it came to a chance of keeping a player, not getting a points deduction, or selling a player and getting a points deduction, I've said that completely the wrong way around, I think, but I think everyone will know the cut of my jib and what I'm trying to say. Clubs won't take the points deduction. They'd rather sell the player because they won't want to risk the missing out on something by a hair's breadth. They won't want that at all. Emery thing, Villa says maybe the possibility that Emmy wants to win something with Villa, the Europa League, might be something he sees as realistic. He was desperate to win the Conference League, absolutely desperate, and he will have believed at the time as well, when Villa were in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, that they could genuinely go on and win the Champions League. So in an ideal world, I think he'd love to win something with Villa, but I think he realises where the club's at, where he's at. Villa have come close a couple of times since he's been there. If he gets the opportunity to go somewhere where he feels he's got a better chance of winning trophies, he's so ambitious. He's 32 now. As much as he loves Villa, I think he'd take it. Sean Cross says, it sounds like Monchi name check Gibbs White has been his favourite player in the Premier League during his interview last night. Pipe dream or realistic? Pipe dream. Villa won't be signing Morgan Gibbs White in the summer. I mean, it sounds like Man City have moved on to other targets, but Jacob said it on the Claret and Blue podcast that we did, and it was in the Athletic article as well, that Villa are having to move down a tier in terms of players that they're going for. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of quality. It just means Villa are going for the kind of the second option players rather than the premium option, because they haven't qualified for the Champions League and because of the finances. So Villa will move down to kind of rung of play. It doesn't mean that they won't turn out to be better than the premium player, but it's more players that they can develop and make better rather than someone who's almost a finished article, which is what I think Morgan Gibbs White is. Forest would want crazy money for him. I don't see Villa at the moment dropping more than, let's say, last summer they dropped 50 million on Onana when they were in the Champions League. Villa, I don't see us dropping anywhere near that amount of money on one player this summer being in the Europa League. I just don't see it. And Gibbs White would cost more than that. So no, I would rule that out. That's for sure. Michael Burt says, surely it's not all negative at the moment. Now, I've been a bit worried about this actually recently. It's probably a good time to address it. I'm worried that I'm actually coming across as a negative, and I'm not a negative person about Villa at all. I never have been. I've probably become more realistic over the years. I think before I was a bit positive, and I would look for a positive probably even when there wasn't one, and my positive would be a load of rubbish. I think I'm just being realistic at the moment that there's Villa are in a difficult time. Not qualifying for the Champions League is a blow, whichever way you look at it. Now, all's not lost. We've still got fantastic players. We've still got a fantastic setup, and we've still got a fantastic manager. So next season will probably be a brilliant season. But I think there's obviously been a couple of things that have happened that have put a little bit of a downer on things. Couple that with, the fact that we're probably going to have to sell a player that we don't want to sell. It's not being negative. It's just being realistic and talking about the hand that we've been dealt. That's what I'm doing. So I am a little bit worried about coming across as negative on things at the moment, but that's not me at all. I'm just trying to be realistic. Furious Badger, can we have a short sponsor or another sponsor below the squad number? Don't think you can in the Premier League. I think you can in the Cups, but you can't in the Premier League to my knowledge. The thing that Villa don't have, which I'm surprised they don't have, and as a way of making money, I'm shocked that they haven't gone down this route. Training kit sponsor. There's a big gap there, literally, for a training kit sponsor. Most big teams have a training kit sponsor nowadays, so I'm surprised that we haven't gone down that route. That's the route that I think the club would go down next. And for a person who sits there reeling off a list of all his achievements, I'm shocked that isn't something that was picked up on in the last year to 2 years. That's something that's a no-brainer for me and a pretty obvious thing to do. Agent Cooper, don't go there about Man City. So obviously they've made a big signing. Would McAtee be a shrewd signing? Could be the next Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers. I'm not going to get into Man City attacking players because I think people are a bit sick of me talking about Grealish. I see Grealish as being more realistic to come to Villa than McAtee. So I don't see that. I actually think Man City would want too much money for McAtee, and Pep seems to really, really like him. Could be another lad from Man City that would come ahead of him. But yeah, let's not get into that today. We've got into that enough recently. We've been over 28 minutes now, so I do like to keep these to half an hour if we can and make them a little bit more palatable. So thank you to everyone that's joined me live. Really, really appreciate it. Sorry I rambled on for too long at the start and didn't get to as many questions as I would have liked to. My apologies to that, but there'll be another one of these coming up in the next few days. So don't worry. Obviously, things change all the time. There's always new things to talk about. So we can talk about anything else that anyone wants to on the next show. Thank you to Match Bingo for sponsoring. Don't forget to get your Match Bingo cards ahead of all the football that's coming up in the next week and scan the QR code on your phone. If you are watching via YouTube, subscriber numbers on the up. Please, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, get subscribed with your post notifications on. That would be really, really pleasing for me. I'd really, really appreciate it. Via audio, 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, a comment on Spotify, and a lovely review. Some great reviews come through on Apple Podcasts. If we could get a few more, that would be absolutely fantastic. So if people could do that for me, I'd really, really appreciate it. Let us know in the comments any content that you'd like to see coming up on the channel. I've got a fairly recent ex-player who's agreed to do something coming up, so watch out for that. Hopefully I'll be able to get that sorted in the next week or so. Certainly one of my favourites to ever pull on the shirt, so I'm looking forward to talking to him. So I'll keep you updated as I know more about that. Be more content coming up tomorrow. Please go back and watch Max's and my video on Jacob Ramsey, or podcast on Jacob Ramsey yesterday, and Greg and mine's podcast on Unai on Monday. We did an Unai special on Monday and a Jacob Ramsey special on Tuesday. So please go back and watch or listen to that content if you haven't done so already. It's 1 o'clock. Go and get yourself some lunch. And as ever, up the Villa.